So in our last session, we have already begun and completed the first part of this letter. And before we begin the next part, let us do a quick review or a quick recapitulation of what we have already completed. So I would like to share my screen with you. All right. So in this letter number 66, which we said, this has been written by Mahatma K.H. to Alan Hume in July of 1882. And as Hume and Sinnett both were very curious to know about this occult knowledge, they posed questions to the Mahatma. And Mahatma Ji would answer their questions through these letters. So this letter is also in a question and answer format. And in this letter, Mahatma Ji mentioned that there are 7 objective and 7 subjective globes. So this is just a summary of which we already covered in our last session, and then we'll continue from there. So these 7 objective and 7 subjective globes, they are the worlds of causes and the worlds of effects. Out of these 7 objective globes, our Earth, that is the lower turning point where spirit matter equilibrates. What it means is that the material attraction is balanced by the spiritual force. And there are infinite ramifications of this number 7. These infinite ramifications, they are very closely interdependent and joined with the 7 principles of nature and 7 principles of man. What these 7 principles are, we already briefly saw. Then he went on to mention that there are 7 kingdoms evolving on our earth chain, the 3 elemental kingdoms, then the mineral, plant, animal, and man. And these kingdoms, they are preceded by numerous septenary stages and combinations prior to these 7 kingdoms. Now on our earth chain, on globe A, the monad passes through the 3 elemental kingdoms, and then it is encased in the minerals of class 1. So this happens on globe A. In the mineral kingdom, the monad does not have to pass through the worlds of effects. This is obvious because minerals are not subject to cause and effect. So it will be encased in the 7 great classes of the minerals, but it does not have to pass through the world of effects. And after it passes through all those 7 great classes of minerals, what passes? The monad. After the monad passes through all the 7 great classes of minerals, then it will give birth to the vegetable kingdom and it will move on to the next globe, that is the globe B. So this is what Mahatma Ji explained to Hume through his answers. And he mentioned that in the classification and the nomenclature that they use, that the masters use, all the kingdoms, including the mineral kingdom, they are divided according to their occult properties and not according to their physical characteristics. So what these occult properties means that the relative portion of the 7 universal principles which are contained in each great class. So according to these proportion of the 7 universal principles, that is how all the kingdoms, they are classified. And he advised us to deeply study the 7 principles of man to draw this parallel, to draw the correspondence between the 7 great classes of other kingdoms vis-a-vis the kingdom of man. Then he mentioned that the monad gets out of one mineral encasement into another by occult osmosis. So we know that the minerals, they have such a rocky body, and this body is more lasting. It does not die as frequently as man, animal, or plant. Yet this mineral body, it will die, but it will die at the end of every manvantrik cycle. That means at the close of every round. So the method by which the monad moves from one mineral encasement to another, that is by occult osmosis. Then we have this knowledge that every molecule of every kingdom, including the mineral kingdom, it is part of the universal life. So this is another important knowledge which has been given to us, that there is no dead matter. Every matter is alive. It is part of the universal life, every particle of matter. And we are told that man's soul is nothing but a compound of the progressed entities of the lower kingdom. The man's soul, that is the fourth and fifth principle, the calm manas. And this entity, the man's soul, it is constituted by the progressed entities, meaning by the elemental essence of that plane. The calm principle and the manas principle. And the instinct and passions of man are determined by the superabundance of the type of entity, whether he is more passionate or whether he is more logical and reasoning. Then Mahatma Ji went on to explain, to come to a agreement on the terms. A round is a passage of the monad from globe A to globe G through the encasement in all the four kingdoms, that is mineral, vegetable, animal, and man. So that is a round. The life wave will pass from globe A to globe G, all the 7 globes, and it will pass through all the 7 kingdoms. Then a globe period. A globe period is a world ring. So that, he said, they have agreed to call the world a globe period, the period in which the monad evolves through all the 7 great classes of a kingdom. For example, in human kingdom, it will pass through all the 7 root races, and that includes the sub races and the branch races. So that is called one world period or one globe period. So all this knowledge about the manifestation of the phenomenal universe and the septenary patterns by which it manifests, all this is contained in the ancient book of Kyute. This we discussed last time. And this knowledge is held secret by the adepts. So having completed this, now we move on further, as mentioned in the letter. And before we move, have a look at this diagram again. This is the diagram which we are referring to again and again in the letter. The earth chain as shown by the 7 globes, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And they are manifested on the 4 lower planes. These are the planes of the solar system. And on the 4 lower planes, the earth chain is manifested. So we have completed to, I think, slide number 14. We move to, yes, so we mentioned about these books, the books of Kyute, okay. And their commentaries, which were still filled with abstruse mathematical calculations. So moving further, the next question that Hume asks Mahatma Ji is, we understand that in each of your other 6 kingdoms, a monad similarly performs a complete round, in each round stopping in each of the 13 stations. So he's still under that misconception. Mahatma Ji mentioned 14 worlds, but he was under the impression that there are 13. And there performing in each a world ring of 7 lives, one in each of the 7 classes, into which each of the 6 said kingdoms are divided. Is this correct? And if so, will you give us the 7 classes of these 6 kingdoms? So he wants to know how life is moving through all these 6 kingdoms and what are their classes. To which Mahatma Ji has answered that if by kingdoms, the 7 kingdoms or regions of the earth are meant, and I do not see how it can mean anything else, then the query is answered in my reply to your question 2. We will refer this question 2 once again. That was on slide 5. And if so, then the 5 out of the 7 are already enumerated. The first 2 are related, as well as the third, to the evolution of the elementals and the inner kingdom. So I'll take you back to question 2. Here, this is question 5 from Hume, and Mahatmaji is saying that this is already answered in question 2. So that is here. In question 2, when he asked about that what are the kingdoms below man, and in which Mahatmaji has explained about these kingdoms. So the 7 kingdoms which he mentioned, they are 3 elemental kingdoms. Then comes the mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, animal, and human. So these are the 7 kingdoms, and 3 are on the objective and 3 are in the subjective region. So this also Mahatmaji had explained that the elemental kingdoms of the higher 2 only an adept or an initiate can conceive of, and the third elemental kingdom is below the crust of the earth. Then mineral, plant, animal, and human, they are evolving on the surface of the earth. Then so this question is answered from here in question 2. Now in this question 5, Hume has also asked, will you give us the 7 classes of these 6 kingdoms? And that reply is not contained. Mahatmaji hasn't given that reply. So in each of these kingdoms, the 7 classes are not named, but Mahatmaji has given us the clue that they are divided according to the occult property that we had just seen. And which means that according to the relative proportion of the 7 universal principles which are contained in them. So this we can draw the analogy from human principle, and he advises us to study the human kingdoms well. The next question is, if we are right, then the total existences prior to the man period is 637. Is this correct? Or are there 7 existences in each class of each kingdom? 4,459. Or what are the total numbers and how divided? 1 point more. In these lower kingdoms, is the number of lives, so to speak, invariable, or does it vary? And if so, how, why, and within what limits? So here Hume is wanting to know the total number of existence of man on this earth chain, and also correspondingly in the lower kingdoms, the number of lives and their variations. Now this truth is again held very, very secret. So Mahatmaji tells him that not being permitted to give you the whole truth or divulge the number of isolated fractions, I am unable to satisfy you by giving you the total number. Rest assured, my dear brother, that to one who does not seek to become a practical occultist, these numbers are immaterial. Why do you even want to know those number of existences? He says that even our high chelas are refused these particulars to the moment of their initiation into adeptship. So these exact numbers and details about the lives and existences in each kingdom, mind you, 7 kingdoms are there. So the exact number of existences in each kingdom on each of the 7 globes in each round, they are not needed by a person who is not looking to become a practical occultist. Who is a practical occultist? Somebody who would study the occult laws of nature and the powers which are inherent or in potential state in man, and he would use these laws and powers to practice and use them to produce tangible results. But that is not our objective. Basically, a person who knows such laws and who can make use of it, I would call him a higher order physics, because those laws of nature are very scientific. What we know on the physical plane, similar laws are there also there on the inner or the subtler planes. But we are not looking to become a practical occultist. And therefore, these exact numbers of existence, they are not of much use to us. In fact, there is a small book called Practical Occultism in which HPB has mentioned how this knowledge is gained or how this occult studies are carried out, the strict discipline that is required to be undergone by that chela, and what are the associated risks. So she gives only some practical suggestions for daily life, but she does not give in the exact details or give any instruction on that practical occultism. And Mahatmaji has mentioned here that even the high chelas, the very advanced ones, they are also not given these knowledge about all these practical details until their fifth initiation. That means until they become actual adepts. Further, Mahatmaji mentions that these figures, as I have already said, are so interwoven with the profoundest psychological mysteries that to divulge the key to such figures would be to put the rod of power within the reach of all the clever men who would read your book. So these figures, the number of existences in the rounds and races and on the globes, they are all interwoven with the profoundest psychological mysteries. Psychological is pertaining to mental and emotional states of the consciousness. And they are subjective in state. These mental and astral, on the mental and astral plane, these are all subjective states to us. So if these numbers are given, if these details are given, then any intelligent person, he would be easily able to use these actual numbers to unravel the mysteries pertaining to these inner planes, and he could apply them for practical use. And this would give him great power. But this poses a great risk because at present, man has not reached that stage of absolute altruism where he is selfless. He has not reached that stage of absolute purity in his motives. So putting such power in his hand is very risky. And therefore, Mahatmaji refrains from giving the exact numbers. All that I can tell you is that within the solar Manvantar, the number of existences or vital activities of the monad is fixed. But there are local variations in number in minor systems, individual worlds, rounds, and world rings, according to the circumstances. And in this connection, remember also that human personalities are often blotted out, while the entities, whether single or compound, complete all the minor and major cycles of necessity under whatsoever form. Now here again, there is a clue for us. Instead of giving the exact figures, Mahatmaji has mentioned that the number of existences of the monad is fixed within the solar Manvantar. So what does this mean? See, our physical Earth, it is part of the Earth chain. There are 6 other globes on the inner planes. And likewise, every other planet has 7 globes. And this forms the planetary chain of that planet. So the evolution of life wave through 7 planetary chains. Ours is only one planetary chain, the Earth chain. So likewise, the life has to evolve through 7 planetary chains, and that will complete a solar Manvantar. So solar Manvantar means when the life period of the solar system is completed and it goes into a solar pralay. So a solar system, it evolves. The purpose of the solar system is to allow a given set of monads to complete their cycle of necessity. What will happen is that these monads, they will pass through every form. Form is the material form. So the monads, their cycle of necessity is that in the solar Manvantar, they will pass through every form of that Manvantar according to the cyclic process of involution and evolution. And thus, they will reach back their source at the end of the Manvantar. This is also referred as the pilgrimage of the monad. And this is given as the third fundamental proposition in volume 1 of the Secret Doctrine. That is the reason Mahatma Ji says that number of existences, it is fixed in a solar manvantar. I will repeat this. Number of existences of the monad is fixed in a solar manvantar. This follows from the simple fact of the third fundamental proposition, which is given in volume 1 of Secret Doctrine, which means that the solar system allows a set of monads to complete their cycle of necessity by passing through every form of that solar manvantar. And therefore, these number of existences or the vital activities means life that is acting through a particular type of form that is fixed for the monad. I'll give you an example. In the Hindu scriptures, many of you must have read, it is said that after passing through 84 lakh forms, then the monad attains the human form. So this is a common thing which people come across. 84 lakh forms, after the Jivatma has passed through them, only then it attains the human form. So this is also a number which is given, that how there is a fixed number which has to be crossed before reaching the human kingdom. Then again in human kingdom, a fixed number, and then so on to the next kingdom. But this number of incarnations through a particular form. So there is a difference. Now we are talking about the number of incarnations through a particular form. Within a round or within a globe, that is not fixed, because that will vary. That will vary according to the law of karma. How many times a entity or an individuality is reincarnated. It will depend on many different circumstances. In case of man, it depends on the law of karma. So the important point to understand here is that the number of forms through which the monad has to pass, that is fixed. But how many times it will incarnate in each form, that is not fixed. It depends on many circumstances. This is what Mahatma Ji is trying to explain here. Mahatma Ji also says to remember that human personalities are often blotted out, while the entities, whether single or compound, they complete all the minor and major cycles of necessity under whatever form. Human personalities. Now, human personality, we know it is constituted of the lower quaternary. Lower quaternary is man's sthul sharir, ling sharir, pran, kam. And due to karma, if the personality perishes before its time or for whatever reason, yet that entity, the jivatma or the monad, it will have to complete all cycles of necessity by taking whatever form. So it cannot do away with that. That is why it is the third fundamental proposition, that the monad has to pass through all the forms, irrespective of whatever circumstances may accrue. Now, in the next question, okay, so Hume is totally confused. He says that so far we hope we are tolerably correct. But when we come to man, we have got muddled. And Mahatma Ji tells him, yes, no wonder, since you were not given the correct information. Now you see, this information is very complex. To understand the monadic cycle, then the evolution of the human being, and the evolution being carried out in all the other kingdoms, it is quite a complex thing. And to add to it, he was not given the entire correct information. Then he asks next question, does the monad of man, that is the ape man and upwards, make 1 or 7 rounds as above defined? We gathered the latter. So as an ape man, he performs just as many rounds and rings as every other race or class. He performs 1 round, and in every planet from A to Z has to go through 7 chief races of ape man like man, as many sub-races, etc., etc. So this is very simple. We need not confuse ourselves. The information that we have, that on every globe, there will be 7 root races. Each root race will have 7 sub-races, and every sub-race has its septenary branch races. So whether he's an ape man or whether he is any other species of any kingdom, he will have to pass through as many rounds and rings as any other kingdom. Now, this was one very long question which Hume posed. And in this question, basically, Hume is wanting to know how many lives a man does a man live through all the rounds. There are 7 rounds. So through all the rounds, how many lives does man live? On each globe, in each root race, in sub-race, branch race, so everything put together. That is what he wants to know. And based on that, he has performed some calculations based on his understanding. And he is asking Mahatma Ji to elaborate or to confirm whether his understanding is correct. So I am not reading this question because it will only confuse you, because Hume himself did not have the right understanding. But it is more important to understand the answer that Mahatma Ji gave. He wants to know the exact number of lives. So this is question 7b, and to this Mahatma Ji has answered, as the above described race, that is, at each planet, our Earth included, he has to perform 7 rings through 7 races, 1 in each, and 7 multiplied by 7 offshoots. There are 7 root races and 7 sub-races or offshoots. So by now we already know that on each globe, man has to evolve through 7 root races. In each root race, he incarnates in 7 sub-races. Mind you, everybody has to go through all of the sub-races and again through all of the branch races in these sub-races. Mahatma Ji mentioned to him that our doctrine treats anthropology as an absurd, empty dream of the religionist. Why does he say that? See, because anthropology is nothing, it's the field of study which will focus on the human origins, the societies, and culture. And the anthropologists, they are quite at error when they conclude that man has descended from ape, which is not the case. So therefore, Mahatma Ji says that anthropology, for them, it is a very absurd and empty dream. And their doctrine, it is confined to the study of ethnology. Ethnology is quite similar to anthropology. In fact, some scientists consider it a branch of anthropology. But in ethnology, there is the comparative and analytical study of cultures and characteristics of different people. So the doctrine of the Mahatmas, it already affirms that origin of man is divine. So there is no question, no doubt that man is descendant from ape. No, man is divine. And their doctrine will explore the evolution of different races. And there will be a comparison of different races, sub-races, and branch races to examine the proportion of unfoldment of the universal principles as these root races progress, how these principles are maturing or unfolding. So that is what their doctrine is concerned about, and it is not concerned about anthropology. And he also adds that it is possible that my nomenclature is faulty. You are at liberty in such a case to change it. So this is because there was no standardized or even appropriate terms in the English language to correctly express these concepts of their doctrine or of the wisdom tradition. So it is possible that Hume or Sinnett may not quite understand or think that the nomenclature is faulty. However, to set you right so far, I will say 1 life in each of the 7 root races, 7 lives in each of the 49 sub-races, So that will be 7 multiplied by 7 multiplied by 7, giving a number of 343, and then adding 7 more. And then series of lives in the offshoot and branchlet races, making the total incarnation of man in each station or planet 777. So this is the first time that Mahatma Ji gives this figure of 777 as the number of incarnations of a man on each globe. On every globe, he will have these many lives as he passes through all the root races, branch races, and sub races. Never before this figure has been given. Further, he mentioned that the principle of acceleration and retardation applies itself in such a way as to eliminate all the inferior stock. Inferior stock is subrace, and leave but a single superior one to make the last ring. Last ring is the last race. Not much to divide over some millions of years that man passes on one planet. Again, the explanation of this is given in more detail in the Secret Doctrine. Basically, we need to understand that how evolution proceeds on all the globes. The speed of cyclic evolution through the different kingdoms, it is not the same for all. This we have seen. It varies due to several factors. For example, minerals have a very lasting body. The body of the mineral lasts for one complete round. But there are other species like plants and animals, they have a very short lifespan. Within the kingdom of plant and animal, or even human, some might have a shorter lifespan and some might have a relatively longer lifespan. So due to all such factors, the speed, the 7 cycles which need to be completed for each kingdom, that speed is not uniform for all of the classes or for all of the kingdoms. But still, the law of progressive evolution in a round, when one round is completed, that means all the kingdoms have evolved through all the 7 globes. Then the evolution of all the different kingdoms of nature, it will end their respective cycles together on the last or the 7th globe. That means by the time the life wave will reach the 7th globe in a round, all the septenary cycles in all the 7 kingdoms will be completed. Though we know that in one kingdom evolution is happening slowly, in the other kingdom it is happening a bit more fast. But all the cycles are completed together when the life wave reaches globe 7. Now this is possible due to the law of acceleration and the law of retardation. They counterbalance each other in this evolutionary path. So what happens during a round? In the descending arc, that means when the life wave is proceeding from globe A to globe D, that is the descending arc of evolution. At that time, the law of acceleration is dominant. Law of acceleration is it will speed up the evolution of certain species or certain classes. And this is counterbalanced by the law of retardation. This law of retardation, it will become operational in the ascending arc. That means when the life wave moves from globe D to globe G. So in the descending arc, it is law of acceleration. And in the ascending arc, it is the law of retardation. And these laws, they counterbalance each other. So Mahatma Ji explains that these two laws work together to ensure that the new higher types, they overcome the old and more prominent ones. By this is what he actually means when he says that the principle of acceleration and retardation applies itself in such a way as to eliminate all the inferior stocks and leave but a single superior one to make the last ring. So actually there is not much detail given about these two laws, but this is what it means, that even though evolution is not uniform in all the kingdoms, the speed of that evolution, but still these two laws work in a way to ensure that by the end of the round, all the 7 great classes are complete in all the 7 kingdoms. Then Mahatma Ji takes an example of 1 million years, and he says that let us take but 1 million of years suspected and now accepted by our science to represent man's entire term upon our earth in this round, and allowing an average of a century for each life. We find that whereas he has passed in all his lives upon our planet on this round, but 77,700 years. Why this number? Because each man has 777 lives on each globe, on this globe, and we have taken average of a century for each life. So 777 multiplied by 100. That is how he comes to the figure 77,700. He has been in the subjective sphere for 9,22,300 years. From where that figure comes in the subjective sphere? Because we have taken example of 1 million years. So if out of 1 million years, man has spent about 77,000 plus years incarnated, then that means he was objective. Then the rest of the time, 1 million minus this 77,000, that would be the time which he has spent in the subjective spheres. That means after physical death, and then in the intermediate worlds, astral and mental. That would be these many years. That is 9,22,300 years. So you see what a complex mathematics, and this is only an example. It is not even the correct figure. This is not much encouragement for the extreme modern reincarnationist who remember their several previous existences. So based on these numbers, if anybody should indulge in any calculations, so Mahatma Ji cautions that should you indulge in any calculations, do not forget that we have computed above only full average lives of consciousness and responsibility. Nothing has been said as to the failures of nature in abortions, congenital idiots, death of children in their first septenary cycle, nor of the exceptions of which I cannot speak. So the previous example in this slide 21, which they took 1 million years, then the average number of lives, that is a century, and then we arrived to the number of years in objective incarnation and in the subjective spheres. This is all based for those people who are in their normal consciousness and they are fully responsible, an average ordinary man. It does not take into account these abortion cases where a life is snuffed out even before he is born, these congenital idiots who, what these mean, that their mental evolution has stopped at the time of birth or maybe at a very early age. So such aberrational cases, they have not been taken into account. And therefore, these figures are they are not exact. They are only speculative. Further, he says, Mahatma Ji mentions, no less have you to remember that average human life varies greatly according to the rounds. You see these things, there are so many things in nature, and yet everything works according to the laws of nature. There is no coincidence. There is no chance. Everything is by the divine plan. Everything is as per the universal law. So many things we have just seen. How a normal consciousness will evolve by taking an example of average number of lives. And yet, where there are exceptions, like the people who have not been able to mentally evolve, or where the life has been killed even before being born, or the children who have not reached their 7 years. They are not 7 years of age and they pass away. So even such kind of things, they are taken care of by the laws of nature. In these law, the cyclic evolution, the septenary cycles, all that is taken care of. And it is not within our power to understand it or even compute it or do those complex mathematical calculations. So that is why Mahatma Ji is saying that you must remember that average human life varies greatly according to the rounds. Now, presently, we are in the 4th round. Okay. And now in this 5th root race, in the Aryan root race, we are. Our lifespans, they are varying perhaps from 80 years to 120 years. 120, I'm saying extreme. And even people die even younger, from 60 years also. But perhaps that in the earlier rounds, the average lifespan of man on our globe. So this is the 4th round, but maybe in the 3rd round, when life was on globe D, then perhaps the lifespan of man would have been longer or shorter. We do not know. So that's what he's mentioning, that the average human life varies greatly according to the round. So in the 4th round, we know what it is, but we don't know what it was in the 3rd round, and we do not know how it will be in the 5th round. Though I am obliged to withhold information about many points, yet if you should work out any of the problems by yourself, it will be my duty to tell you so. Try to solve the problem of the 777 incarnations. So that is the number, that is the figure he has given us. In the current round, that is our 4th round, 777 incarnations for a normal man on this globe. But in the previous round, this number would have been different. So he cautions Hume while making any calculations. And the same goes for us. Should we take up any calculations, we should keep all these factors in mind. So perhaps we'll take 1 or 2 more slides and then we can stop. In the 8th question, so Hume is a bit confused again. He says, M said all mankind is in the 4th round. The 5th has not yet commenced, but soon will. Was this a slip? If not, then collating this with your present remarks, we gather that all mankind is on the 4th round, though in another place he seemed to say we are on the 5th round. That the highest people now on earth belong to the first subrace of the 5th race, the majority to the 7th subrace of the 4th race. But remnants of the other subraces of the 4th race and the 7th subrace of the 3rd race. Pray set us quite right on this. So Hume's question is that which subraces of which root races are currently evolving on Earth? He was confused by Mahatma M's remarks about the 4th and 5th rounds. So at any given time, many subraces are evolving together. It is not that one subrace is completely finished and then the next one begins. So presently, the people who are highest in evolution, they belong to this first subrace of the 5th race. This is what Mahatma M would have mentioned. But the majority of the people currently on the globe, they belong to the 7th subrace of the 4th root race, and with remnants of other subraces of the 4th race. Now this was Hume's understanding. It may not be right. So to this Mahatma KH, he mentioned that M knows very little English and he hates writing. But even I might have used very well the same expression. A few drops of rain do not make a monsoon, though they presage it. So this is a very well-known quote from the Mahatma letters. It is often quoted. And what it means is that if a few events happen ahead of their time, that does not mean that the season has commenced. The fifth round has not commenced on our earth, and the races and sub-races of one round must not be confounded with those of the other round. So he has clarified that the fifth round mankind may be said to have commenced when there shall not be left on the planet which precedes ours, that is the globe C, a single man of that round, that means the fifth round, and on our earth, not one of the fourth round. So let me explain this. It is not difficult to understand. See, we are the humanity of the fourth round. So this entire humanity of our earth now, that means all the monads who have incarnated, plus those who are in the subjective spheres, all of them would have passed on to the next or the higher globes. So what Mahatmaji is saying, that we can say that the fifth round is commenced when on the globe C there is not a single man of the fifth round. That means all of them have come to our globe, the globe D. And on our earth or the globe D, there is not a single man of the fourth round. So all the fourth round people have moved to the next globe. Okay, so it is happening gradually. The life wave or even this human kingdom, it is moving from globe C to globe D, then from globe D to the next one, globe E. Lastly, he mentions, you should know also that the casual fifth round men, and very few and scarce they are, who come in upon us as avant couriers, do not beget on earth fifth round progeny. So what it means is that even though fifth round men are present on the earth, but it does not necessarily mean that their children are also fifth rounders. Their children could very well be fourth rounders, that is our present round. And Plato and Confucius, they were fifth round men, and our Lord, that is Lord Buddha, a sixth round man. The mystery of his avatar is spoken of in my forthcoming letter. Not even Gautam Buddha's son was anything but a fourth round man. So these two great men about whom Mahatmaji is speaking, Plato, he was an ancient Greek philosopher, and Confucius, he was the great Chinese philosopher. And these people lived so many centuries ago, somewhere between 551 BCE to 348, both these. Now, their teachings were well ahead of their time, of both these philosophers. And they are said to be belonging to the fifth round. That means their principles had matured to that level, as will become mature in the fifth round. So they already had their corresponding principles matured to the fifth round. And Gautam Buddha, he is said to be a sixth rounder. So his principles are matured to an even higher level. But we all know Gautam Buddha's son, who is called Rahul. He was like any other ordinary person. He doesn't necessarily have to belong to the sixth round. He is just like the people of the fourth round. So when we speak about a person belonging to a particular round, what it means is that his corresponding human principles, they have already unfolded or reached the maturity, which would not be the case in a lower round. So in the fourth round, this principle of calm is fully matured. In the fifth round, the fifth principle, that is manas, it will become fully matured. So on. In the sixth, it will be buddhi, and so on in the seventh. So with this, I think now we will conclude this session so that we can go on to the Hindi translation, and after that we can have the discussion if we please. So I request Sister Meenakshi ji to give us the Hindi translation.
नमस्ते, थैंक यू सिस्टर। आज हम लेटर नंबर 66 का अगला भाग ले रहे हैं। इसमें एओ ह्यूम मास्टर को प्रश्न पूछते हैं, हम समझते हैं कि आपके अन्य 6 किंगडम्स में प्रत्येक में एक मोनड इस तरह के पूर्ण राउंड करता है। प्रत्येक राउंड में 13 स्टेशंस में से प्रत्येक में रुकता है और वहां प्रत्येक में 7 जीवन की वर्ल्ड रिंग निभाता है। 7 क्लासेस में से प्रत्येक में एक बार, जिसमें 6 किंगडम्स में से प्रत्येक को विभाजित किया गया है। क्या यह सही है? और यदि सही है, तब क्या आप हमें इन 6 किंगडम्स के 7 क्लासेस को बताएंगे? मास्टर इस पर उत्तर देते हैं, यदि आप किंगडम्स का अर्थ माने 7 किंगडम्स से लगाते हैं, तब मैं नहीं समझता कि इसका कोई और अर्थ हो सकता है। तब आपके इस प्रश्न का उत्तर आपके दूसरे प्रश्न के उत्तर में मैंने दिया है। और यदि ऐसा है, तो 7 में से 5 की गणना पहले ही की जा चुकी है। पहले 2 और साथ ही तीसरा भी एलिमेंटल्स और इनर किंगडम के विकास से संबंधित है। यदि हम सही अगला प्रश्न है, यदि हम सही है, तो मानव काल के पहले कुल 637 जीवन अस्तित्व है। क्या यह सही है? या प्रत्येक किंगडम के प्रत्येक क्लास में 7 जीवन अस्तित्व है, यानी 4459? या कुल संख्या कितनी है और कैसे विभाजित है? एक बात और, इन निचले किंगडम्स में जीवन संख्या कायम वही है या क्या यह बदलती है? और यदि ऐसा है, तो कैसे, क्यों और किस हद तक? इस पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं, आपको पूरी सच्चाई बताने या अलग अलग विभागों की संख्या बताने की अनुमति नहीं होने के कारण मैं आपको कुल संख्या देकर आपकी तसल्ली करने में असमर्थ हूँ। निश्चित रहे मेरे प्रिय बंधु, जो एक साधक नहीं बनना चाहता, उसके लिए यह संख्याएं अर्थहीन है। यहाँ तक कि हमारे उच्च चेलाओं को भी इन विवरणों को देने से नकारा जाता है, जब तक कि उन्हें सिद्धत्व की दीक्षा नहीं मिलती। जैसे मैंने पहले भी कहा है, यह आंकड़े गहनतम मनोवैज्ञानिक रहस्यों से इतने गूंथे हुए हैं कि ऐसे आंकड़ों की कुंजी का भेद खोलना माने उन सभी चतुर लोगों की पहुंच में अधिकार शक्ति की छड़ी को रखना जो आपकी किताब को पढ़ेंगे। मैं आपको केवल इतना बता सकता हूँ कि सौर मनवंतर के भीतर मोनाड के जीवन अस्तित्व की संख्या या महत्वपूर्ण कार्यकलाप निश्चित है, लेकिन परिस्थितियों के अनुसार माइनर सिस्टम्स, इंडिविजुअल वर्ल्ड्स, राउंड्स और वर्ल्ड रिंग्स की संख्या में स्थानीय भिन्नता है, विशेष भिन्नताएं हैं। और इस संबंध में यह भी याद रखें कि मानवीय व्यक्तित्व को अक्सर भुला दिया जाता है, जबकि जीव सत्ताएं चाहे पृथक हो या मिश्रित, सभी छोटे बड़े पुनर्जन्म के चक्र को किसी भी रूप में पूरा करते हैं। ह्यूम का अगला प्रश्न है, हम आशा करते हैं कि यहाँ तक हम निहायत ही सही है, लेकिन जब हम मनुष्य के बारे में विचार करते हैं तब उलझ जाते हैं। इस पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं, और इसमें कोई आश्चर्य नहीं, क्योंकि आपको सही जानकारी नहीं दी गई थी। ह्यूम का अगला प्रश्न है, क्या मनुष्य के रूप में मोनाड यानी कपी मानव और उसके ऊपरी मानव ऊपर बताए अनुसार एक राउंड या 7 राउंड्स करते हैं? हमें बाद वाला लगता है। इस पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं, एक मानव रूपी वानर में वह हर किसी रेस या क्लास की तरह ही राउंड्स और रिंग्स निभाता है, यानी वह एक राउंड करता है और प्रत्येक प्लेनेट में यानी ग्लोब ए से जे तक वानर रूपी मनुष्य में 7 मुख्य रेसेस से और सब रेसेस से उसे गुजरना पड़ता है। ह्यूम का अगला प्रश्न काफी लंबा है। उसमें वे कहते हैं कि मानवीय जीवनों की संख्या को बताए। इस पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं, ऊपर उल्लेखित रेस के अनुसार, यानी हमारी पृथ्वी सम्मिलित प्रत्येक ग्रह पर उसे 7 रेसेस, प्रत्येक में एक और 7 उपशाखाओं के जरिए 7 रेस निभानी पड़ती है। हमारा सिद्धांत मानव जाति विज्ञान को धर्मवादियों के बेतुके खाली सपने के रूप में मानते हैं और हम मानव वंशशास्त्र तक ही सीमित रखते हैं। संभव है कि मेरी नामकरण पद्धति ठीक न हो। ऐसा होने से आप इसे बदलने के लिए स्वतंत्र हैं। आपको सही करने के लिए मैं कहूंगा, 7 रूट रेसेस में से प्रत्येक में एक जीवन, 49 सब रेसेस में से प्रत्येक में 7 जीवन, या 7 into 7 into 7 यानी 343 और 7 और जोड़ दे। और फिर ऑफशूट और ब्रांचलेट रेसेस में जीवनों की श्रृंखला, प्रत्येक स्टेशन या प्लेनेट में मनुष्य के कुल 777 जन्म बनते हैं। सभी निम्न दर्जे के सब रेसेस को हटाने के लिए और अंतिम रेस बनाने के लिए केवल एक उच्चतर सब रेस को रखने में गतिवृद्धि और गतिरोध का सिद्धांत इस तरह अपने आप लागू होता है। एक ग्रह पर मनुष्य जितने लाखों वर्ष गुजारता है, उसे विभाजित करने के लिए ज्यादा कुछ नहीं है। मान ले कि हमारी पृथ्वी पर इस राउंड में मनुष्य के पूरे कार्यकाल को हम 10 लाख वर्ष लेते हैं। यह विज्ञान द्वारा अब अनुमानित और स्वीकारित है, और प्रत्येक जीवन के लिए औसतन 1 सदी रखकर हम देखते हैं कि जबकि वह हमारे ग्रह पर अपने पूरे जन्मों में केवल 77,700 साल गुजारते हैं, वह सब्जेक्टिव स्फीयर्स में 9,22,300 सालों से था। इसमें जिन्हें अपने कई पिछले जन्म याद है, ऐसे अत्याधुनिक पुनर्जन्मवादियों को कोई प्रोत्साहन नहीं है। यदि आप और अन्य हिसाब लगाना चाहते हैं, तब यह न भूले कि ऊपर हमने चेतना और जिम्मेदारी के केवल पूर्ण औसतन जीवन का हिसाब लगाया है। गर्भपात, जन्मजात मतिमंद बच्चों की अपनी प्रथम 7 वर्ष में मृत्यु, इस तरह की विफलताओं के बारे में कुछ भी नहीं कहा गया है, और न ही उन अपवादों के बारे में जिन्हें मैं कह नहीं सकता। आपको यह भी ध्यान में रखना होगा कि औसतन मनुष्य जीवन राउंड्स के अनुसार बहुत ही बदलते रहता है। हालांकि मैं अनेकों मुद्दों पर जानकारी न देने के लिए बाध्य हूँ, फिर भी यदि आप किसी भी प्रश्न का हल स्वयं करें, तब आपका निराकरण करना मेरा कर्तव्य होगा। 777 जन्मों के प्रश्नों को हल करने का प्रयास करें। अगला प्रश्न है, मास्टर एम ने कहा कि सभी मानव जाति चौथे राउंड में है। 5वां राउंड अभी तक शुरू नहीं हुआ है, लेकिन जल्द ही शुरू होगा। क्या यह कोई भूल थी? यदि नहीं, फिर इसे आपकी अभी की टिप्पणियों से मिलाते हुए हम देखते हैं कि संपूर्ण मानव जाति चौथे राउंड में है। हालांकि एक अन्य जगह पर आप कहते हैं कि हम 5वें राउंड में हैं। पृथ्वी पर अधिकांश लोग अब 5वें रेस की पहली सब रेस के हैं। बहुसंख्यक चौथी रेस की 7वीं सब रेस के हैं, लेकिन चौथी रेस के अन्य सब रेसेस के और तीसरी रेस के 7वें सब रेस के शेष लोग मिलकर है। हमारी प्रार्थना है कि हमें सही बात बताए। इस पर मास्टर उत्तर देते हैं, मास्टर एम अंग्रेजी कम जानते हैं और लिखना पसंद नहीं करते, लेकिन हो सकता है कि मैंने भी उसी तरह से व्यक्त किया हो। बारिश की कुछ बूंदें बूंदों से वर्षा ऋतु नहीं बनती, चाहे वे इसका पूर्वाभास कराती हो। हमारी पृथ्वी पर 5वां राउंड शुरू नहीं हुआ है और एक राउंड की रेसेस और सब रेसेस को अन्य राउंड से न उलझाए। 5वें राउंड की मानव जाति तब आरंभ हुई ऐसा कहेंगे जब हमारे पूर्ववर्ती ग्लोब पर उस राउंड का एक भी मनुष्य नहीं बचा हो और हमारी पृथ्वी पर चौथे राउंड का एक भी मनुष्य बचा न हो। आपको यह भी ज्ञात रहना चाहिए कि हमारे अग्रगामी यानी प्रणेता के रूप में 5वें राउंड के क्वचित ही आने वाले पुरुष, और वे बहुत ही कम और दुर्लभ है, वे पृथ्वी पर 5वें राउंड के वंशज उत्पन्न नहीं करते। प्लेटो और कन्फ्यूशियस 5वें राउंड के पुरुष थे और हमारे भगवान बुद्ध 6वें राउंड के पुरुष थे। उनके अवतार के रहस्य के बारे में मेरे अग्रगामी पत्र में लिखा गया है, ऐसा मास्टर कहते हैं। और वे कहते हैं कि गौतम बुद्ध के पुत्र कुछ और नहीं बल्कि चौथे राउंड के मनुष्य थे। थैंक यू, नमस्ते।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji, for explaining this. These doctrines of the rounds and races and the globes is very fascinating, and it also requires a lot of insight to understand how all of these evolve simultaneously. So now I would request if any of you have any questions or any points to be discussed, we can take it up now. Any questions from anybody? In fact, it helps in our understanding if we look at the diagrams. And further in the letter, there is a diagram which has been drawn by Joel Kuhl. We will take it up in the next session. And using that diagram, then Mahatmaji has just given a summary of all the things which he has explained. So the next session will be simpler to understand using the diagram which Joel Kuhl has made, and Mahatmaji modified that diagram to use it for at all the scales. You can use it for 7 races or you can use it for the 7 globes. So that is how he has used that diagram. So if there are no more questions.
Can I have a suggestion, please?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, there is a book written by Vibha, and it was written in 1920, published in 1920, in which researchers were carried out. The name of the book is Man, Whence, How, Whither, and How. And the fourth chapter of the book is the beginnings, not the beginning, but beginnings of the 6th root race. We can sometime later on, in any time, we can correlate these information on this book. It will be useful for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And that is a very nice observation that it is the beginnings of the root race. As we mentioned in this letter, that there is not an abrupt stop to the previous race or sub-race and then a new start. It happens gradually over a period of several sub-races, that one race gives rise to another root race. And we have also known or seen this, that a new root race is evolved from the corresponding sub-race of the previous race. For example, our 5th root race has evolved from the 5th sub-race of the previous or the 4th root race. And now when the new 6th root race has to come, it will evolve from the 5th sub-race of our 5th root race. So the 6th sub-race has already started evolving, it is said, in parts of US and Australia and New Zealand. So that is our 5th sub-race, and it will, it is the 6th sub-race, which will slowly evolve into the 6th root race. So you are very right, Colonel Saab. I think that was a good observation. Thank you. And we should really study that book, which you have mentioned. Any other thing anyone would like to add? Okay, so thank you all for participating in today's session. And with this, we come to the close. We will conclude the letter in our next session. So we'll close this with a closing prayer. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Sarvesham Swastirabhavatu Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Lokaha Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukhabhag Bhave Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all for joining. Thank you.